Hello everybody. Before I do the rotary hook and the bobbin case, I thought I'd just show you this part of the machine that's quite often neglected. I don't think there's any videos on it, but it is a vital part of the machine. And what you have in there is you have a bearing, a simple bearing which aids the movement of your dogs so they can go up and down. With this is that they freeze up. No, they're notoriously bad for freezing up. When I first came to these and I looked at it in an engineering's point of view, I went round the machine thinking, oh yeah, right, that's that, this, and oh yeah, that's interesting, but why isn't that bearing moving? You know, the machine itself is quite a 201 is actually quite a simple machine, very sort of basic or almost, and this is one area that sort of attracted me, because I thought, well, I've seen these before on, I think 66 and 99s. I think they have two on. I'd have to check that. It's so long since I've actually used one of those. I had a look at it and thought, oh, so it's not working so properly, because I couldn't see any movement. Took it apart. And sure enough, the bearing was frozen up, and thought, right, so I undid that one, and then another 201 came in, same problem, but the bearing was absolutely welded up terribly. Now with that, took it apart, but it took so long to actually do, you know, soaking it in kerosene paraffin, and eventually I got it freed up by doing a certain technique with it, which I'll show you. And really this is one thing that I think you should do. Very straightforward, not complex, and I'm trying to keep in the thing of the nose strip thing, keeping it down to the absolute minimum. But I do feel that this is one area that you should have a look at, and it's relatively straightforward. It is a fiddle, and it doesn't always go back just how you want it. Because it fiddles, you know, the screw just won't quite line up, things like that. But if you persist with it, you'll get there. And I think the other thing is that you're learning how this machine works, and just even the other day with the deep clean and things like that, taking these covers off, you're actually getting an affinity with your machine. So carry it on, you know, get to know your machine, get to know what to do if you find something that's not quite right. So it builds up your sort of confidence as well. And this one is easy, really. Now you come to it, and I asked you to scrub this with kerosene, and then I asked you to oil it. And I asked you particularly to oil on each side of this mechanism here on the bar, because this bar has to move backwards. And I've got the two pieces here, and I don't really want to fiddle with the focus, but that is basically how it is, and that goes up and down, and the bearing turns inside, so it's a nice smooth action with the feeds, okay, with the bearing on there, nice and smooth. Now if that is frozen, if that bearing, where have you gone? If that bearing is frozen up, that smooth action, and I'll just come back, the elliptical action of the bearing on the dogs as it's being pushed round starts to become jerky or not correct, because that bearing's not doing what it should do. And in the event of that will then, if this does become frozen, what happens, it starts wearing two, your feed there starts wearing two flats onto your actual bearing, and then it stops turning. As simple as that. The machine will still function, it will still go on, but you will not have it as it should be doing. If it does, you just sling it all back together and try and forget about it. If you can get a spare part with a rotating bearing that's nice and smooth, it wouldn't go amiss to actually replace it. But like I say, if there are flats, it won't turn, won't do as quite as what it should do, but it will still function. Okay, so to remove this, and I'll just show you. So you've given this a good scrub. This is often frozen up as well, and you do actually have a, bear with me, a slot there, so you can use a screwdriver to undo it, which would assist you. Okay, that comes back, and you flick your dogs. That will actually drop your dogs down for free motion. Now, because not many people take up free motion, this will never be touched. Maybe have a drop of oil put around it, but more often not, they're nicely frozen in. And when you want to do free motion, you screw that back in, and your dogs have been dropped and locked. That allows you to then do the free motion, and you can clearly see now that bearing popping up there. That's the one you've got to free up. You may be lucky if you have oiled it and kerosened it and you rock it about a bit, it may free up for you. Okay, I'll just keep doing that, and it should start moving in the feed, and it may just do the trick. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to move it back. So you drop your lever, screw in, because you don't want that moving around. Now I'm going to use Tipp-Ex in a pen. I've used this forever, for a very long time. Used it on car engines mainly for timing, so you can clearly see the timing mark. Writing on high tension leads, numbering them, and distributors, things like that. And you can write your name on an engine part. You know, you can write anything, and you can just get from a dot to you know, a full signature if you wanted. So what you do, I don't use nail varnish, and I'll come to nail varnish in a bit, because you're advised on some sites to use nail varnish, and what I saw this morning just had me screaming up the wall. So in this part here, you mark the bar and you mark the mechanism here. So you just put a dab so I now have a reference point for when I then come back, and I think you can just see it there, then there. So I can see that there's a line on the block and on the bar itself. So I'm going to be pushing this bar back, and what you do is you get your screwdriver and you go for that top screw there. Yeah, undo, and this will most likely slip when I do it. Right, hasn't done that. Sometimes these are corroded in, sometimes they're gunked up. full of crud, and you then have to start loosening it up a bit. That's why I specifically asked you to clean with kerosene and oil it, because I knew I was going to have to move this. Now, if you push it down like so, your dogs will raise. Pull it back and your dogs will come down. Okay, so up and down, and that's how you adjust your dogs. So you undo the screw, you slightly move your mechanism, and then you tighten up when you've measured the depth of your dogs and you're happy with it, and then you just tighten it up, and then that's all you do. But we're taking this a little bit further on this one. Now you have to, on a good day and the machine is in good condition, you can waggle this back, okay, until it gets to the end. And I'll show you on here, you're taking this part there to back there, so you're just moving the whole lot back. Now that's moved back, but and I'll just take this back in again, if for any reason it won't waggle or it won't move back, then it's most likely got a bit of gunk in there, and you have to tap these back ever so gently. So I use dowel mainly, and this is one of the few jobs I use a hammer. Hammers are only used when I have to use them. Yeah, I don't use them like I've seen on eBay, sorry, not eBay, YouTube, where on the end here, because the actual bolt wouldn't come out, this person started hitting it with a hammer. You don't do that. You know, these, if you can imagine, this is an Omega watch, and parts of it are actually a Rolex watch. That's how you have to think of them. Yeah, they're big chunks of metal, but you can easily distort them and alter them to the detriment of the machine. So you very rarely I use a hammer, and it's only in specific areas, and I know where I need one. I knew I needed one today just to show you. So you get your piece of dowel. It can be a pencil, just cut off both the ends so it's nice and square, and instead of hitting downwards like that, you want to try and get in line with the bar so it's a straight push back. And this is only for corroded or badly gunked up mechanisms, and you tap it back. Now if you hear the tone of the hit, it changes when I get back there. It's an engineering thing. So when you hear it change tone, you know you've got as far as you can, and you stop. Okay, so it's little baby taps, it's not big clunks, it's just tapping, and that's going back, and change of tone. I know I can't take any further. The wood is there so it doesn't bruise the metal. Flick it up to get as best view of this screw as you can. With an angled screwdriver, and these are great, they allow you to get into tight spots and things like that, and they're ideal for your throat plate screws, which I'll show you in the next video, and also for this job. It's hollow ground, and this is my favourite one. You put that on that screw head, and you take the tension off, and there you go. Now it becomes difficult to keep turning it, so this is where the jeweler's screwdriver comes in, because if I used a big screwdriver, it's not particularly in line, unwieldy, and it will keep slipping off. But little jewelers, once you've taken off the nipping up, which I'll explain in a bit, once you've got that in there, you can turn, and it's not to the detriment to the screw, but it allows you to undo that screw, because all you're doing is taking the slack. Is the thread, if it's a good thread and everything's okay with it, it will just spin out as it's doing, and I'm not doing any harm to the machine, no harm to the screw head, and that should come out. Oh, it will do. And your screw comes out, and no damage there at all. You then unscrew your adjuster there, adjusting screw for the lever, pull it back, and this just drops out. Now when you come to it, and I'll just come back here, there's the actual bearing, that's the one you're after, and if it's got the flats on, then just put it back together and carry on, and just oil it, because there's not a lot you can do unless you're going to replace it. If this is turning but not particularly well, soak it in kerosene overnight and try in the morning and try and twist it free, and it will come free. Then if you need a bit more of a go at it, if you like, rubber band, put it around the bearing, and that gives you a better grip to then keep turning. And if it's badly frozen up and but you're getting a little bit of give, just keep turning it backwards and forwards, tap backwards and forwards, put some oil on it, put it in kerosene for a bit more, backwards and forwards, and eventually that should free up. Now I've had two that have been a nightmare, and they were absolutely, you know, frozen solid. I think it's the actual shape of the bearing. I think it allows the oil to get in, dry out, and then dries out, frees up the bearing, and more oil gets put on, and it just builds up, because the amount I was actually getting out of it was quite considerable. So I had to have a think about this, of how, and nothing would really get it going. So I thought, well, there's only one way to really do that, is to trap that bearing piece and then try moving it. I've got a problem with that. The problem is that you could distort this bearing quite easily, and if you distort it, then it becomes just like a squared off bearing. So kept thinking, and then this little chappy appeared, which I've had for years, another one, and I thought, right, well, what can I do with that? That hole there looks almost the size of that. Not a case of grabbing it like that. I would ruin the surface of the actual bearing, which you don't want, because the problem with them is that you damage a metal surface, you'll do damage to the actual machine, because it will just start breaking down and wearing out quickly. So I don't want to damage it, I don't want to scrape it, I don't want to distort it. So on here I've got this hole which is part of the actual pliers, and it is actually 3/8, I think. Yeah, it's a 3/8, that's a 3/8 drill, and that will fit in there. Okay. Almost a 3/8, near as damn it. So this bearing is just ever so slightly larger than 3/8. pop it in there. I don't squeeze it, I just grip it. If I squeezed it, I would distort that bearing and ruin it. So I pop that in, and this is the one of the few times I use metal and metal against a friction surface, and I'll go on to that later about that, because I saw something this morning that just upset me again. And what this does, you gently grip that bearing and you turn it, and well, wiggle it first to actually break that oil seal, and then I can then start turning. It will give it up, it will eventually give up and start turning for you, and keep tweaking it backwards and forwards, and then you move somewhere else on it, and backwards and forwards, soak it in kerosene again for another hour, something like that, add oil, just keep at it, and eventually that frees up to the point where that will spin. Your main body holder that actually holds the bearing will spin. So I know now that then that moves. I don't, like I say, I don't put any force on there, it's just a very, very gentle grip, so I know I've got hold of that bearing, and then that allows me to actually start winkling it out, so it will move. So that's fine. Just got to pop it back in, and this can be a fiddle with the screw, and I'll just come in a bit so you can see what I'm doing. And a good there you go. So you're going to rotate it up clockwise, no, anti-clockwise. So this bearing goes back into your feed here. Okay. And it's just dropped in. Yeah. And good to practice. Now you get your screw, and somehow you have to get that in with the screw. There you go. I'll just bring that out again. Like I say, it is a fiddle. Right, I've screwed that back in to what it normally should be, so I haven't dropped the dogs. Now, slightly loosened it, so I've got a bit of play. Put in my screwdriver, small one, and it should just take it. And this is the beauty of the jewellers, because I'm not damaging it, I'm just trying to take up the slack, and it's engaged it and gone back in. It is a fiddle, but you can get there. You then put your bent one, angled screwdriver, and raise that up. Sorry, getting in the way. So putting that in, so I'm just going to nip this up, and this means that I'm just going to go down to the end of the thread and then just give it an extra little twist. No macho rubbish of, you know, giving it an extra 3 turns or whatever. Just give it a tiny little, I can't see if you can see that, just give it an extra tweak. Okay, that should then hold it. And just to make sure that everything is moving okay, just undo that, and the lever is moving fine. And the other thing is that the bearing is well about a fifth of the way into that feed there. Okay, so that's ready to go back in. Screw it back down. And gently waggle it back until your alignment that you've done with the Tipex comes on. Now, if you notice, the bearing has just gone slightly past. That's fine. If you go too far, you get this screw head impeding on your feed here. So there has to be a little bit of clearance there, and also that so the bearing can turn. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the alignment. I'm happy that the bearing is in its back in, and I'll then get the screwdriver, because I know the machine's running fine. It's just moved a tad like that, and coming back to the nipping up, it's come to the end, and I just give it a little twist like that. That will hold that screw until you come back to bring it out. Now, if it's not, if you can't waggle it back and you have to tap it back, I'll show you how to do that. So, waggle it back, and I'll come all the way back there. I then get my hammer and my pencil or bit of dowel, something like that, making sure that the bearing is almost seated in the fork, or actually is in the fork, and I think that's why they did that. And then just run it on the top bar until you hit the mechanism, and you gently tap. And it should shift, making absolutely certain that that fork isn't bending when I'm tapping it back in, and making sure that the bearing is actually going into the fork, feed fork. Okay, so tap it back, and I'm almost there. Yeah, the two alignments are off, so I need to bring that up. Now the alignments are together, and I tighten up. Same again, bring it to the mark and nip up. There you go. That's okay. I've got a bit of clearance there, because if that hits there, it freezes the machine up. Undo that. Just make sure everything's working okay. Your dogs should be the same height as you left it. All done. Very straightforward. Just a bit of a fiddle, but you will get there. It will build your confidence up, and it will make your machine run as it should. Tomorrow I'll be doing the bobbin case and the removal of the rotary hook. which is totally unique to me. It's something I've a procedure I've done to remove it, but it's going to take quite a long video to show you this, why I actually do that. But you will find it very interesting, and I advise you to watch the entire video for the reason that I will be explaining an awful lot at the beginning, and then I will actually do the procedure, and that will be at the end. But you have to watch the full video to actually see it, rather than me just show you, oh well, you do this. I'm trying to explain why I do things in a certain way, not just to show you. It shouldn't be a case of monkey see, monkey do. It should be a case of the reason why I'm doing this to machine is because, and you become what's known as a knowledgeable doer. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks very much. Bye now.